Welcome to the 2012 GBC Debate here at the University of Chicago Booth School of Business. I'm your host, Brian Williams. Let's meet our candidates who are here to address the most pressing issues on students' minds. We've got MCG co-chair Mitt Romney.
Brian, a pleasure as always.
Joint degree aspirant Barack Obama.
Brian, it's always a pleasure.
And
We love you too, baby.
And last but not least, a lifetime member of the Adam Smith Society, Ron Paul. Mr. Paul. Mr. Paul.
Where are we?
To my continued amazement, you are in third place in the race for the most powerful man on earth. Our first question comes to us via Twitter, and the question is this. Booth students are limited to 3,000 pages of printing a year. This is inadequate for any MBA student struggling to get by. As GBC president, what would you do to ease our suffering? We'll start with you.
Brock, that's me, of course. I am the President of the United States. Yes, this is true. It is true. It's true. Now, Brian, listen. I've been hearing from working class MBA students all over this fine campus struggling to print out that case study. Folks are hurting. That's why my administration has put in place no fewer than 42 printers throughout Harper Center. We need to help folks out a little, invest in our future.
Brian, I have to respond here. This president's job-killing student life fees are strangling competitiveness. Do we want to live in the kind of world where some Harper fat cat decides who prints what and where?
Mitt, now that is just not true.
What you are talking about, Mr. President, is socialized printing.
Mitt,
and the hard-working folks of Booth will not stand for it any longer.
Mitt.
Brian, if I may. Now, some folks may think that I'm crazy, but I'm just wondering, should this school be in the business of printing at all? We gotta let the students do their own engravings. It is nobody's damn business if a fella wants to just chisel his homework onto a stone tablet.
Thank you, Mr. Paul. That suggestion was unsolicited, archaic, but probably better than what we've been working with for the past 2 years. Turning back to you, Mr. Romney.
Yes.
It's been well documented that you spent the summer interning at Bain.
Yes.
Where it's also been alleged, in contrast to your current stance on printing, that you often went through up to 2 reams of paper per day.
Brian, I'm really glad you brought this up.
Wastefully using Comic Sans 36-size
Brian,
font
a great
on
question.
presentations.
It's a great question. Thank you for bringing
How
this
are
up.
you going to respond to these allegations?
Throw out those damn printers. Now, I mind you, it doesn't have to be on a stone tablet. Maybe someday a fella wants to hire a telegraph gal. You know, tap out his
Brian,
homework
as I was saying,
and send over the wires.
My opponent here
Privatized
the president
wires,
has tried to villainize my time at Bain.
Mitt,
Really,
admit it. You waste paper.
I create jobs, Mr.
Mitt,
President.
not only do you enjoy firing people, but you enjoy wasting paper and you do not want to pay for it.
Mr. President, I create jobs. Who do you think restocks those printers?
Nonsense.
When I was an undergraduate student at the University of Texas, sometimes I popped and pressed my own papyrus. Good enough for me. Occasionally, we took the exams via semaphores.
Thank you, Mr. Paul. I'm sure your views on innovation will ring sound and true with the entrepreneurs in the crowd. Let's get back after a word from our sponsors.
And I made my way through medical school via smoke signals.
That little boy's mother must be very proud. If that voice is any indication, he's going to grow up to be handsome, charming, and improvisationally witty. All right. Welcome back, folks. Let's move on to the next topic of our debate, foreign policy. For each of our candidates, what do you think is the most pressing issue in foreign policy? We'll start with you, Mr. Romney.
Brian, I think everyone in this room can agree that our neighbor to the north represents the greatest existential threat that this school has ever known. A nuclear-armed Kellogg must be stopped at all costs.
Excuse me, Mr. Romney, for clarity for our audience, business school students, are you suggesting that Kellogg, another business school, has nuclear ambitions?
You heard right, Brian. And the latest reports in the Chai Bus suggest we may only have months.
Mitt. Kellogg is not going nuclear.
And while some might kowtow to the Purple Empire, my administration would not hesitate to take action.
Mitt, I reject that characterization. I suggested perhaps a social mixer, a co-TNDC.
Oh,
perhaps.
Maybe a little froyo in the Winter Garden. You can't make this stuff up.
I just think that a bipartisan effort would work better.
Mr. President, you have admitted to palling around with known Northwesterners like Rahm Emanuel.
They have great golf courses. I'm sorry.
Brian, I have to chime in here. It is time to end this foreign affair boondoggles. I say, if Canada wants to go nuclear, it's their own business.
Mr. Paul, surely you don't mean that.
We have been stuck in this downtown quagmire for decades now. Anyone remember that? No end in sight. We've lost so many good young men and women to those quiet study rooms at Gleacher. And now we want to go all the way up to Evanston? And we're on this topic. Let's talk about how those bastards at Culver Cafe refuse to take my gold bullions.
Cool. Mr. Paul, that's not the subject matter at all, actually. We're talking about foreign policy.
Gold bars. Gold bars are good enough for David Booth. Okay. And they should be good enough for us.
What are you talking
Just the other day, I tried to trade in 3 ounces for a Caesar salad.
Ron, you and your
Oh,
Caesar
no, that shouldn't be a problem.
You don't even eat salad.
Then they told me, no gold bars, only U.S. tender notes. Next, they're going to tell a fella that he cannot butter neither.
Thank you,
No
Mr.
mutual
Paul.
exchange.
Your economic views are charmingly antiquated. Let's hear more from those sponsors, please.
Maybe a few heads of livestock.
Folks, welcome back to our 2012 GBC debate. Now, we're all aware that many of the people who use the Harper Center facilities on a daily basis aren't actually students or current faculty members. We've got fellow grad students from neighboring schools, colorful members of the surrounding Hyde Park community, lab students. So here's a serious question. How open should our borders be? We'll start with you, Mr. President.
Now, listen, Brian. This fine campus was built by people from outside Chicago Booth. Dean Kumar came from Stanford. Randall Krosner came from the Federal Reserve. Eugene Fama, I believe, worked at Medici from some point.
Mr. President, what you're describing is a fantasy land.
No, it is not. Absolutely.
Brian, if I may, I prepared a few harrowing photos for the audience.
Maybe Mr.
There are some harrowing photos, perhaps, that would depict... Now this is the true face of immigration at Chicago Booth. What I am advocating, and what I've been advocating for years, is to build a secure perimeter, a wall around Chicago Booth.
Mitt, what you are proposing is not only illegal, it is immoral and quite frankly unethical.
What we are talking about is the real and invasion and depletion of finite resources. Do we want to live in the kind of world where any undergrad can just wander into the Winter Garden and drop off an anchor baby?
Brian, if I may have a moment here.
I'm sorry, Mr. Paul, for the sake of our audience, I'm
Brian,
going to have to
listen.
insist.
It is time for us to take a step back and take a deep look into our roots. Who among us truly deserves to be here?
Why, Ron? That
actually sounds
seems
quite
quite
We
reasonable.
need
actually.
to look at the start of our campus.
Oh, you mean like our founding fathers,
No.
Booth and Harper and Corzine?
No.
You mean the fine immigrants who built this great campus?
No. I mean, we need to go back to the era before this big GBC. That's why I say we need to end this GBC business school boondoggles. We need to go back to the time before the GTS and the OCR. We need to get all the hunter-gatherers up in here.
Hunter-gatherers?
Hell,
That's it.
I learned a competitive strategy while wrestling a whole bunch of ferocious possums out on the plain for the last
Thank you, Mr.
bit
Paul.
of
I'm afraid
wheatgrass.
I've lost my patience. We've run out of time.
Please, no. No.
If our candidates could leave us with just one word, just keep it to one word to describe your candidacy, please.
Opportunity.
Justice.
Possum wrestling.